the house, make a list of every electrical component, and it was my task to make sure they were converted to run on 240 volts AC. And that was quite an experience to check washing machine, cookers, and radios and things like that. But it was a good practice for me. And now, how it started was really when I was put into digs, accommodation, and we had a Welsh landlady, and her name was Tregoning, and she was quite a, shall we say, playful person. She would get me into a lot of trouble, the milkman and that. And but let's look at the other side of her. She was so excited, holding the wires for me to solder on, and she would then say, when I say to her, "You sure it won't blow the fuses?" "No, it won't blow." Just went bang, and the head jumped up almost to the ceiling. And I thought you said it won't explode. I said, well, it shouldn't have done. We have to find out why. But then I got to a point I was trying to test these Dream 1 and Dream 2 configuration. And I made what was supposed to be, I had hoped, a power generator to light the lights and to power the small cooker. And of course, there's no books on the market saying if you do this, you'll find a hole in your ceiling. On the first attempt, of course, it went to the ceiling. And of course, that was a job to get down. The question was, what do I do now? Tried to say it won't take off the table. The silly thing did. And now I put a lump of lead on the bottom, saying that would certainly hold it down. I'm sorry, I was wrong. It didn't hold it down. The stupid thing went to the ceiling. And I said to the landlady, look at that stupid thing. I said, I tried to stop it from going there. You'd have to get the step ladders and put a large screwdriver so I could put it down. And when I got hold of it to put it down, boy, that was cold. My hand sort of stuck on the handle. He said, I managed to put it down. The landlady got warm water and poured on my hands to free it. Now, I had no idea why it was so cold. There was nothing on the market in book form, and here I am, stuck with a problem. In the end, I said to myself, if it wants to be stupid enough to fly, let's give it a body. So I made up a body for it, and when we went out with it, we were surprised that it went up, well, quite a few yards, as I picture it, above the roof. It glowed. And in those days, we only had long radio. So that meant we had this long copper wire from the radio right down the yard to the pole to pick up the radio station. And of course, that was a silly thing to be there, because when it hovered, eventually the glowing came, and then the energy went on all these wires. And of course, I wasn't right, because everyone's radio blasted out, and they couldn't turn it off. And I said, so I became unpopular. But what happened was that the one that put it through the ceiling meant I had to have temporary accommodation by the king's pleasure. And of course, the poor landlady had to go to bedsit. Unfortunately, I never saw her again after that. But while I was in this, what we say, special care, where you have to chamber under the bed because they lock the door so you won't get hurt.
How would they put you in jail, John? Why don't you just say it?
Well, it was a policeman's house.
You wrecked his house. Yeah.
And after a few days, they provided me another accommodation, but they made sure the person locked me in the room so I wouldn't do anything that would improve the ventilation as I did to 30 Crawley Road.
Blowing holes through roofs.
But I built up equipment, and we find that it took, by legal papers of my document out of homes, it said that the person had to make a number of trips. There was so much equipment he had accumulated to move it. to the new site. But at the new site, I had to find a job suitable. And the landlady had already asked me if I liked to work in the chemist shop. Son had to enter the Air Force, which was a 3-year period. And then we had this trouble that the boss of the chemist shop was short of assistants. So she said, well, I'll take you to meet him and we'll see if he's prepared to take you on. Now, I'd like to point out here, Dr. Monardo's homes in those days were kin and master of all things. And they set you in a job, they set you in accommodation. You must not move from that job or the accommodation without their consent and approval. And of course, being a teen boy that wants to learn things, he forgot about the rules. And of course, he went to the chemist shop, and it was this other house. The homes had no knowledge of. All they know that the checks are sent to assist the care to look after me was returned. No one available at the house, so they didn't know where I was. I worked at this chemist shop. In 4 weeks, the chemist said to me, John, I will give you the keys to the shop. Be on time, open it up, and I'll be in by 10 o'clock. If you have any trouble with a prescription that the man wants in a hurry, if you're not sure, just ring me and tell me exactly what you do, and I will say okay. I never did have to call him. But a lot of strange things I did there, which are very funny, but at the moment, those things don't help the project. But what did happen, the boss one day came to me and said, John, look, you deserve more money than I can give you. What would you like if I get you a job in the hospital and you have better money? So I agreed. I went down to the hospital. They gave me some checks and they said, okay, we'll give you a month's trial. And that led on to something else. Now the thing is, from there I moved on and I went to another area which also brought me in contact with the Ministry Electricity Board. There they have big generators being constructed, big magnetizers to magnetize the project. After that, we got to a point where I kept talking about the work. And in the end, the boss could see people were laughing. And he came in and said, John, you have 3 options. Pack your bags and go. 2, shut up. 3, do it. So I said to him, I'm afraid I like my job and I don't want to go. Secondly, I can't shut up. It's suddenly driving me mad. But I am prepared to do it. So he said, right, what do you want? I thought, well, we got everything except the rare earth. Now, we get it for you. You have to pay for that. We can make an HP agreement for payment. So had they got the kilo. Now, bear in mind, in that time period, 1 kilo of rare earth cost only 32 cents per kilo. Now, you can't get that for that price today. Now, they had all the other things, copper and stuff like that. They had bakelite as the insulating material we need. So all I had to do was draw up what I wanted done. And there, 30-year-old experts on magnetism and that, they got this old magnetizer, stripped it down, and then tried to set it up. Now, of course, everybody was hoping it wouldn't work, because then the laugh would be really great. But they did, they toyed with it, and in the end, they got a layer segment. It was a pudding mixture. And what we did with that was to try to get them to energize it in a particular way. And they worked at this and they got it. One of the 4 of us that was controlling 11 areas actually worked the calculation for the AC coil. No one has ever used AC in magnetic work. And of course, it looks like that was not going to work. But they did what I said, and I don't know if they made more than one try, but they did bring me this segment. I looked at it, and I was happy. I was okay. Go ahead and make me through. I want 8 for a roller set, and I want a plate made this size. And yes, eventually we got it. And lo and behold, it ran around the plate. You know, that proved the job. Then, you see, the question was, the electric board had agreed to good nuclear power. So this device didn't interest them. No, it was really exciting, but for production, they're already committed.
What kind of voltage were you getting, John?
They got 210 out of it. It didn't quite make the 230 then, but because the trouble was I had to learn what was going on with the system. And
what year was that?
That was 19... that was the end of 47.
So you had a new type of generator that was giving that kind of output without any input whatsoever.
Yeah, there was no input by
spinning
itself.
magnets, going around itself. Midland's electric board permitted you to do this, in fact challenged you to do this. You did it for them. It was doing this kind of output. And what was the reaction of everybody around?
Well, of course, they were amazed. To them, it looked like some novelty, some toy, a very heavy one, I must admit. But to them, it's a toy. To see a roller running around a plate, whoever seen that? Nobody's seen a roller run around a plate on its own with no power input. So it was a joy, a toy that excited people. But they could not see that making an electrical house. So that wasn't interest. Any case, they were committed. Amen. Now, from there on, it was a question to do some experiments. And of course, the workshop was a research station where we test to find faults in materials, and we could give them long-run testing. So everything was in the right place. All I had to do is find out why and what would happen. And of course, I tried to use I made coils around it and thought, right, this is it. I'll strap on some wires. Now, but to solder the wires are, the iron was red hot, but as I approached it, it went dead cold. I could hold the tip. Yet it was still plugged on the mains, heating it. So I thought there must be something wrong with this iron. So I unplugged it, got another one from the store, plugged it in, nice and hot, went to fix that wire, and that too was flat.
So why? Why weren't you able to solder? It kept getting cold.
Getting cold. Well,
because of the
eventually
machine.
I realized what was happening. The iron tip was losing electrons to the air and getting hotter and hotter because of this action.
Where were the electrons going?
They just go into the room, just go there, mixed up with the airflow and everything else. What we found out was at what we must be doing, if I was losing electrons, I knew I was losing electrons from the tip bit. That's why you have to replace them every so often, because they're too worn out. The question must be, the reverse was happening. Electrons was going into the iron and cooling it. The more that went in, the cooler it got. And it never took long for enough electrons to knock that cold. So you couldn't solder.
So those were electrons that were literally pumping out of the device that you had built.
Yes.
And they were pumping out at such a fantastic rate that they were cooling an intensely hot soldering iron, taking it right down to a temperature you could touch with your fingers.
Yes.
So
I could hold it.
So was this device that you'd invented, was it a superconductor? What was going on with it?
Well, that was a problem. I had to get it finished. That was only the first test, so that was okay. So I'd see the rollers running around. I'd see that the iron don't work when you approach it. So I accept that electrons was more than they were losing. That went cold. So we solved one problem. So we make the next ring, because they now know what to do, and then rollers again, and the third one, and then we